everybody, it's Annette from the Art of Intuition, and today we are going to talk about collective awareness, collective awakenings, and what does that exactly mean? When we come through, we are all part of different collectives. You know, we don't just link up to one collective. And when I say link up to one collective, I mean from your DNA. You don't just link up to one, you link up to different ones. So when we start detaching from collectives consciously, what you find is until the collective clears certain things, you don't 100% clear that program. That's why we have to have the collectives come through. That's why it has to be it's a very symbiotic process, that we will go through something on a micro level and then we'll go back through it when the collectives go through it. I went through, when I was going through some of the beginning parts of my ascension, as far as the feeling kind of isolated and those type of feelings when you first start detaching from human realities, I went through that on a micro level in 2016, 2017, and then when the collectives went through COVID back in 2020, I found myself kind of going through it again, because I was still technically on a DNA level connected to that collective. So I couldn't 100% clear a lot of that stuff till I went through it a second time, because the collectives were going through it. Now, and they're also, you know, you're kind of clearing the disillusionment of a lot of stuff. And you can kind of see when you went through it, and then when you kind of go through it again, a lot of times we'll say, oh my God, no, what's going on? Why am I going through this again? You go through it on a deeper level, and you really can't 100% complete a process till the collectives go through it. So that's why it's so important to assist the collectives. However you can assist the collectives, whatever you're supposed to do to assist the collectives, it's very important to do that. And a lot of times we don't know what that is in the beginning. And sometimes in the middle, we don't know, you know, what's the best way I can assist the collectives today? What's the best way I can do something? And we don't know until we kind of get to the other side of a lot of stuff. So what you're seeing now and what you saw in 2020, COVID is a good example of a collective awakening, in a sense, of a lot of people being affected by one thing, that, and they let, what's the word I want to use? They connected up. They were all kind of keyed up, but I don't really feel like that's the right word, but they're all kind of keyed in a sense, to one collective. And they were more effective from COVID than some other people in different collectives. So you kind of see how different people kind of get in the collective, get activated a certain way. And I did a stream on Instagram. I'm going to try to get it up on here, but I've had nothing but technical issues today from every sense. So even getting this video out is going to be a minor miracle, considering how this stuff is going today. That there's a reason why not everyone goes to ascension at the same time. You would have collective mayhem, collective madness. If everyone was in the same place at the same time, going through the same stuff. You would have nothing to hold anything in place. And a lot of people would say, okay, well, all of human realities we're trying to remove ourselves from them. Why do we care if they stay in place? Some of those systems still support you during different phases of your process. And if everyone went through ascension at the same time and no one knew what was going on, it would be mass chaos. Right? I mean, everything would be collapsing at one time and there'd be nothing new to replace it. The point of people going through ascension at different times is so the first waivers, the second waivers can set up the new system. So when people start disconnecting from the old, they have something to link up to. If they don't have anything to link up to, where are they supposed to go? That's why it's so important that we create what we create. And we start building the new systems. We start building the new reality, so people have a place to go when they disconnect from the old. So in the beginning, for a lot of us, nothing else was built yet, you know, or very skeletal realities were kind of built on, okay, this is how things were done, especially first waivers. And I would even say beginning a second waiver. So if we count the first wave as 2010 to 2020, and you have 3 waves in that 10-year period, you'll have 3 waves in between 2010 and 2020. But 2010 to 2020 is considered the first waivers, and 2010 to 2020, or 2010 to 2020 first waivers, 2020 to 2030 second waivers. So, and there'll be 3 different iterations in that second wave. But eventually, once you're done, once 2030 hits, everything kind of collapses and they're just all second waivers. You have to build the new, right? And it's hard to dismantle and have everything completely fall apart if you don't have the new thing built. So that's why everything has to go in stages. And that's why different people are in different parts of the process. Different collectives are in different parts of the process. Some people are up in one collective, but they're not in another. And it's like, how do I know? If you're affected by it, you're part of that collective. And I use this as an example on another video I did, because I was watching, and I did a video maybe last week, I don't know, about the different, how the UFO sightings and all that stuff is kind of back in mainstream again. The Congress is doing hearings on them. And we talked about how it's an activator of galactic consciousness. And, you know, you can watch the video on that. I don't want to too much rehash some of that. But I remember thinking, it's like, oh, you know, I'm surprised this is not getting more people interested in the congressional hearings, or people, because even I was listening to them just to see where are the collectives. I mean, what's going on this? And it was very similar to some of the COVID realities. It's just from a galactic perspective, whereas COVID kind of came from the soul perspective, in a sense of you have two different paths. You have to align and activate and embody your galactic aspects. You have to align, activate, embody your soul aspects. COVID was more soul activation, and all this stuff going on with the UFOs is more of galactic activation. Some people did not really get affected by COVID, and everyone was in some way affected, but some people were affected more than others, and some people went through a different type of clearing process with COVID, with the COVID realities. And I just call them COVID realities to kind of lump them into kind of what they are from a higher perspective, kind of what they were meant to move the collectives forward to clear, and that's why those realities came in the way they did. But if you have, and when you saw kind of what happened, even though you didn't have everyone going through it at the same pace, in the same space with it, everyone was somehow affected, right? And it's such in kind of a similar way. So when we talk about the collectives, everyone was affected by COVID in some way, but different mini collectives within that main collective were affected different ways. Some people had mass clearings with it, other people didn't. Some people had major financial things with it, other people didn't. So all the collectives kind of, depending on what phase you're in, what collective you were still attached up to, how it was affecting you. And it was massive activation for a lot of people. It removed a lot of people out of realities that they weren't aligned anymore. They didn't want to leave on their own, so they kind of got yanked out of them. So there was a lot of reasons why the collectives went through it, right? To clear a lot of stuff. And for a lot of us who'd gone through some of those clearings earlier on a micro level, we needed the collectives to go. Now I'm seeing it from another, I know I did a video, I don't remember when I did this one, but I really felt we're going to see the financial system start to go through a kind of realignment, whereas COVID was sort of a realignment from some systems as far as health systems went, and people realigning their lives and what was important, what wasn't important, what they wanted to do, what they didn't want to do. Huge realignments there. Are they now aligned to the highest for a majority of humanity? No, but they're still aligned to something higher than they were before. And with the UFOs, you kind of see the same type of thing. You're starting to see people get a little interested in it, but it's not everybody. Because once again, if you have everyone going through this activation the same way, you could have mass panic about what is going on. You know, it's also kind of, it hits on a lot of different collectives. It hits on people that are really into the galactic type of stuff, that have a fear of galactic type of stuff, because it activates that fear to clear so they can embody in those aspects when it's time for them to do that, but they have too much fear around it. Works through some of the fear. And the people who have an interest in it, right, who just kind of want to kind of delve more into it. So it's a galactic activator for them. It activates their galactic DNA. You have some people who are not interested in it at all because they're in a different phase. But if you had everyone going through it in the exact same way, you would have mass hysteria. You know, you would have mass panic. And then the activations, it's almost like they can't complete to where they need to complete to because there's too much interference on everything else when everyone's going through the same thing at the same time. So we talk about that a lot on a micro level within our own realities. Like we'll be going through something and we're like, why can't all these people come through it with us? So why does no one want to be in this reality with me? And I want to set up this kind of stuff and nobody wants to be here. No one's here. It's just me. We talk about this a lot on a micro level, and we talk about a lot how it affects us. Talk about it on a macro level. Look at how it affects things, affect the collectives, and you get that broader scale of how you start to understand why everyone can't be effective. Everyone can't be interested in this. And I started to kind of feel and understand that and be able to interpret that in a different way. It's like, yeah, everyone can't be really interested in this because it would take too much away from other things different people are working on as far as working on internally. And the people that are attached up to that collective that are going to get those activations, work through some of that fear, they're almost a different way. They're a different wave in a sense, you know. And as soon as they come through a certain level, it'll all get raised to a difference. It's all going to keep getting raised, so eventually it's going to affect everybody. Or they're going to have more of an interest in pursuing it. But right now, it would be too disruptive to bring everyone through. You know, too disruptive to laying the foundation for New Earth. New Earth, which is basically just what we call higher line realities. They don't even exist on old Earth, you know, old human Earth. They exist on New Earth. So when you see that, that's usually what people are talking about. Has new systems, has new everything, and we have to be able to set all that stuff up. So when people disconnect from human realities, they have a place to go. They have realities they can start to share with other people who've already set up New Earth realities, have already set up soul line realities. And then people can decide if they want to share in those or not. But mass chaos. And a lot of people would look at the world today and go, but we do have mass chaos. It seems like it's mass chaos. But if you notice, it's mass chaos in different ways. Different people are affected by different things. Different collectives care about one thing. Different collectives care about another thing. You do have one big main collective, which COVID seemed to hit like the big main collective or the bigger overlying collectives on collectives on collectives. Think about it as like a big pyramid scheme, I guess, of collectives. But you start to kind of understand what it can't be everybody all at once. You know, we can't all come through the exact same thing at the exact same time. It would just disrupt everything. And some people call for that. There's a lot of people who do this type of work that kind of wish in a way everyone would just come through or start coming through. But look at what it took for you to get to where you are. And think of all humanity going through that. And if you had all humanity going through that at the same time because of some kind of colossal thing. Now, that does not mean that a lot of people have not seen more colossal things, right, coming to start to shake humanity out of old Earth and get humanity focusing on their ascension process and getting them kind of shaking them awake in a sense. Will it happen to every collective all at once? To the extent COVID kind of touched so many different people, though in different ways. And there were some people that went through COVID and had a beautiful experience. And I don't mean just going through COVID specifically, but the whole realities. They might have strengthened their relationship. They enjoyed being away from people. You know, different collectives had a different feel. And also where you are in your process and how attached you are still to those collectives makes a difference. You know, if you had cleared everything, well, I can't say clear everything, but clear a majority of stuff on your own, and then you were just connected to a DNA at a DNA level and gone through the clearing on a DNA level, when the collectives move through, you're going to have a different experience than someone who completely really rooted in that collective and who had not cleared anything. So they were getting sort of their superficial clearings in a sense. I would say superficial just because not to minimize it, but just saying kind of shallow clearings we kind of begin with, which feel massive at the time, but when you get through some of the other ones, you realize they're really just the beginning. So look at the collectives. Look at what affects you. Look at what you have interest in. Look at what does grab you right now. You know, what does interest you right now? What are you kind of interested in? I know I bought like one of those projectors that does space stuff on the ceiling for my my nephew, and I was setting up a room for him because he's going to come visit next week. And I kind of went in there and I kind of made the whole thing like a space theme, and a galactic theme, and I went in there and I was laying down and I put the light on, and I found like it was such an activator for me. Just to lay there and watch the stars and all that stuff kind of project up on the ceiling, and look at what does activate you. Look at where you kind of feel like you're fitting into the collectives. Look at what feel like it doesn't fit anymore, what doesn't affect you at all, which you look at and you can see it, but you don't really feel like you gotta have an interest to you. To me, interest means activation. If I'm not interested in it, it's not really an activation for me. I have to have an interest in it for it to really be what I would consider an activation. If I don't have interest in it, it means it's not time for that activation. I've already gone through that activation. I've integrated it, and right now it's not doing anything. It doesn't mean I might not have another activation integration with it later, but right now it's not at the forefront. It's not a priority for me. Priorities, look at where those are holding for you right now. Look at where those are setting for you right now. Those are very important things to really be able to kind of look at and understand, like, how do I feel about that? Wait, how do I feel about that? What's really going on with me? Because a lot of times when we start, and that's why it's always like, well, don't look out there, look inside. And sometimes looking outside gives you an idea of where's everybody else at? Where are the collectives at? Like, I will look outside it and kind of look at that, but I do it from that perspective. I'm not looking outside to see what's going on because I don't know what's going on inside of me. I'll look outside just to see, okay, what's going on with the collectives? How many people are interested in the UFO hearings? I kind of want to see that, How big is that collective that's getting that galactic activation right now? How big is all of that? How many remembrances are going to come from these activations of people just opening up to, what, do I feel fear here? Do I feel, is it curiosity? Do I kind of want to look into more of this stuff? How do I feel about it? That's a collective that's getting activated right now. It might not be your collective, but it's a collective. So dive into that stuff. Have fun with that stuff. Look at where you are. Look at where the collectives are. Don't judge where anybody is. Don't judge where you are. Just see how it has to kind of piecemeal out. And that even though it feels like when we're going through our own clearings, we're going through it such a slow pace, and we don't understand why everything feels like it's so slow. But look how far we've come. Look how much we've had to clear. And then you can look at the collectives and understand why it has to be kind of slow, why it can't be all of a sudden. Why can't everyone go through the exact same clearing in COVID, the physical clearing that some people went through? Even though it felt like at the time mass people were going through it, it could have been so many more go through it. But that might have been too jarring. That might have been too much of that moment. So, and not everyone was supposed to go through that type of clearing at that rate at that time. It's all very orchestrated. It's all very, like I always say, there's a cadence to it. So just be aware. When we talk about consciousness, we talk about awareness, and be aware of what's going on with the collectives. Don't judge the collectives on where they are, but be aware of what is going on. Are people kind of getting into some of the galactic stuff and not so into all the more human stuff? You still see more people gravitating more to the bigger, there are bigger collectives that are still into some of the human, I'm going to just say human drama, political, day-to-day kind of stuff. There's also different activations they can get out of that as far as empowerment, standing up for yourself. Oh God, what's the word? I can't think of the word I want to use. It'll come to me later. Conspiracy theory, all that type of stuff. They're still going through physical realities to clear things. It's just, it might feel kind of like, oh gosh, they're still in that. We're still kind of wrapped up in that. And oh, look at the people getting activated over here by all this kind of galactic stuff going on, which is kind of becoming a little more mainstream, which kind of makes that a little fun. But the amount of people looking at that is nowhere near the amount of people kind of looking at that. So you also get a sense of how big the collectives are that are getting activated by certain things right now. And how big does this have to get over here on the galactic activation to get everyone's attention to refocus? And will that happen? Or will that continue to stay on a smaller scale and have people still over here? So it's kind of fun to play around with, kind of fun to look at. I will say, the collectives, like I said, they're interesting low. Don't let the collective, even though if you're interested in the collective, in a sense, you're still like dumped to it. If you feel like you still are more in tune with what you're doing with yourself, don't get distracted with what the collectives are doing. But looking at what the collectives are doing does show us kind of why our journey goes a certain way, why we can't move so fast, how disruptive it would be for us to move so fast through ascension, so fast through embodiment. And when we can see how the collectives and everything has to move there. So it's, I don't want to say mind, it will blow your mind when you start looking at things from those perspectives, from that consciousness, to really see the magnitude of how far we've all come, how far the collectives have come in a sense, and how far we're going to be going. So, okay. Keep practicing the art of intuition.